The day I got a promotion, my team lead shoved my chair back and laughed, "Don't get cocky. They only picked you because you're cheap." Then he whispered, "We'll make sure you don't last a month." I just smiled and said, "Thanks for the heads up." By Friday, HR was holding a file I quietly put together. And his name was on every page. I'm not the kind of person people notice at work. I never have been. I'm quiet, I keep to myself, and I just try to do my job the right way. Not perfect, but careful. I've always believed that if I stayed out of office drama, worked hard, and didn't give anyone trouble, I'd be left alone. Maybe even respected. I joined this company straight out of school. Nothing fancy, just a mid-level analyst job at a financial services firm. The kind of place where people talked big about teamwork, but spent half their time looking for someone else to blame when things went wrong. I didn't know any better. I just thought this was normal. For the first year, I was mostly invisible. Which suited me fine. I worked late when I had to, took on extra assignments, stayed quiet in meetings. I wasn't making friends, but I figured that wasn't what I was there for. Then there was Greg. My team lead. Everyone knew him. Greg had this charm that people either fell for or didn't dare challenge. He joked with the managers like they were old friends, got drinks with the higher-ups, laughed loud in meetings. He had that way of turning every group conversation back to himself. But under all that charm, Greg had this habit of picking. At first, it seemed harmless. A jab here. A sarcastic comment there. "Wow, you finally figured that one out." Or, "Remind me, you're the quiet one, right? The one who only talks when it's your annual review." I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe this was just how offices worked. I told myself that for a long time. But it didn't stop. It got worse. He'd hand me parts of his workload late in the day with a casual, "You don't mind helping out, right?" And when I finished it, he'd swing by the next morning and tell the manager, "Yeah, glad I stayed late to fix that." Like I wasn't even there. Other times, he'd throw in little digs when we were around people. "Gotta make sure, my name, doesn't fall asleep on this one." Or, "You know how analysts are, give them a spreadsheet and a dark corner and they're happy." And I still stayed quiet. I didn't know how to speak up. I didn't think anyone would care if I did. He was the team lead. I was just a name on a chart. So I swallowed it. Every time. Then, about 3 years in, everything changed. I got called into a meeting with 2 senior managers. I thought I was in trouble. I actually rehearsed an apology in my head on the way there. But when I sat down, they smiled and told me they were promoting me. Lead analyst. A real title. A real raise. They said they'd noticed my work. How I never missed deadlines. How I stayed calm under pressure. I must have looked completely blank because one of them actually laughed and said, "This has been a long time coming." I walked back to my desk in a fog. People congratulated me. Even a few who usually ignored me gave me nods and smiles. I felt proud. And nervous. But mostly proud. Greg was sitting at his desk, spinning a pen in his hand. He didn't say anything at first. Just gave me this slow look. Then, without warning, he shoved my chair back with his foot, not hard, but enough to make me slide a little. "Don't get cocky," he said, loud and clear. "They only picked you because you're cheap." A couple of people nearby laughed. But it wasn't funny. Then he leaned in closer, voice low. "We'll make sure you don't last a month." I don't know what got into me, but I smiled. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I'd finally had enough. I just said, "Thanks for the heads up." And that's when everything in me shifted. For the first time in 3 years, I stopped trying to ignore it. I started watching. Closely. Every meeting, every email, every snide comment, I paid attention. I took notes. I saved emails. When he dropped work on me, I logged the time and the project details. When he took credit, I wrote down who was in the room. I started staying late. But not for him. For me. I put together a file. A quiet, careful, detailed file. I cross-referenced everything, dates, times, witnesses. I kept it clean. No opinions, no feelings. Just facts. I didn't rush. By Friday, I had enough. And then some. That afternoon, while Greg was flirting with a client on a call, I walked straight to HR. No announcement. No drama. Just a quiet knock on the door. I sat down and said, "I have something you need to see. It's about my team lead." I opened the file. Greg's name was on every single page. And I wasn't even close to done. I thought handing that file to HR would be the end of it. Maybe Greg would get called in, given a warning, maybe even reassigned. I thought I'd finally get some peace. I was wrong. HR took the file. They nodded a lot. They thanked me. They said they'd handle it. Then nothing happened. Days went by. Then a week. Greg didn't just keep acting the same, he got worse. It started with little things. He'd accidentally leave me off meeting invites. He'd assign projects without telling me, then tell the managers I was slacking. When I called him out in emails, he'd copy higher-ups and make it sound like I misunderstood. One morning, I came in and found my chair missing. Just gone. Everyone acted like they didn't see anything. I stood there, in the middle of the floor, trying not to shake. By lunch, it was back. No explanation. Another time, I opened a shared document during a team call. Greg had changed my numbers. Made my report look sloppy. I caught it just in time, but when I messaged him about it, he sent back, "Relax. We're all just trying to help." I sent every bit of it to HR. Every single thing. Forwarded, printed, dated. Still nothing. One night, I stayed late, finishing up a project for a client Greg had handed me. He'd made sure the deadline was impossible, only I managed to pull it off. As I packed up to leave, I passed by the break room. Greg was in there with 2 other team leads. I heard him laugh and say, "He thinks he's safe now. Poor guy's got no idea how this place really works." I stood outside that break room for a long time. That was when I realized, Greg wasn't acting alone. He had people. Other leads. The ones who got drinks with him after work, the ones who laughed at his jokes in meetings. I was never going to win this by waiting on HR. So I started digging deeper. I watched everything. Every person who brushed me off. Every time a project got changed last minute. Every time a manager shrugged off one of my reports about Greg. I started keeping notes on them, too. Turns out, Greg wasn't just harassing me. He was playing games with invoices. Pushing junior staff to do unpaid overtime. Covering up missed deadlines by shifting blame onto temp workers. All of it hidden under layers of friendly emails and casual chats. And HR. They weren't ignoring it. They were part of it. Not all of them. But enough. I started noticing how the same HR rep handled every complaint about Greg. How that same rep showed up at Greg's birthday drinks, tagged in photos on social media. So I stopped sending reports to HR. I started sending them higher. Quietly. Anonymously. Straight to the corporate ethics line. With attachments. Dates. Screenshots. Names. The first time, nothing happened. The second time, I got an auto-reply. The third time, I got a call. From someone at the corporate office, not our branch. They wanted to meet. I didn't say a word to anyone. But that week? Greg started looking nervous. He wasn't laughing as loud. He stopped leaving early for drinks. A couple of the leads who used to hang around his desk started keeping their distance. And then came the real twist. The corporate investigator, a woman named Laura, showed up. No warning. No announcement. Just walked onto the floor with a clipboard and a badge. She wasn't smiling. Greg saw her, turned pale, and walked straight to his office. That's when I knew, this was bigger than I thought. And it wasn't over. When Laura showed up, things changed fast, but not the way I expected. She didn't call a big meeting. She didn't sit Greg down for a talk in some glass office where we'd all see. Instead, she started small. Real quiet. She pulled random people aside, asked simple questions. How long had they been on the team? How was Greg to work with? Did they know anything about invoice discrepancies? People started getting nervous. Not loud nervous. The kind where folks stop chatting in the break room. The kind where people suddenly have to take this call when Greg walks by. 2 days later, one of the junior analysts, Sarah, got called into a meeting with Laura. Sarah wasn't part of Greg's crew. She was one of the people he dumped work on, like me. When she came out, her face was white. She packed up her things and left for the day. Didn't say a word. That night, I got a message from her. Just 3 words, "You were right." The next morning, Greg came in looking rough. Same suit, but his eyes were bloodshot. He tried to start up his usual jokes with the managers, but no one really answered. Then came the first real blow. An email from corporate went out, not just to our branch, but to the whole regional division. Effective immediately, an internal compliance audit will be reviewing management and HR processes at our company. We expect full cooperation. No names. No details. But it shook the floor. That same afternoon, 2 managers, the ones who'd promoted me, got called into a private meeting with Laura. They came out looking stunned. I didn't see them again for 2 days. I started to wonder if I'd made a mistake. That Friday, I got called in myself. It wasn't HR. It was Laura. And the regional director. A man I'd only seen once at a company party, shaking hands and leaving fast. They had a printed stack of my reports. All of them. Even the ones I'd sent anonymously. I thought I was dead. Instead, the director looked me straight in the eye and said, "Why didn't you come to us sooner?" I just said, "I didn't think anyone would listen."
He nodded. No smile. Just a nod. Then Laura asked me to walk her through everything. Start to finish. Names, dates, details. No guessing. Just facts. I sat there for 2 hours. When I finished, Laura slid a document across the table. "Sign this," she said. "It just says you're cooperating with the investigation." I signed. My hands were shaking. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You're not the first. But you're the first with proof." I walked out of that room feeling, I don't even know. Not safe. Not happy. But like maybe this wasn't a losing fight after all. That's when the real twist hit. The HR rep who'd been brushing me off, the one I thought was just friends with Greg, got walked out. Middle of the day. No warning. Box of her stuff in her arms. Nobody said a word. After that, it was like the office cracked open. People started talking. Quiet at first, then louder. Turns out, Greg wasn't just covering for his friends. He was tied up in some bad stuff with vendor kickbacks. Fake invoices. Ghost contractors. Stuff way over my head. And half the people who'd laughed at his jokes? They started scrambling to cover themselves. It wasn't about me anymore. It was way bigger. And Greg? He was still showing up. Acting like it was business as usual. But his hands shook when he picked up his coffee. His eyes darted around every room. I knew something he didn't. His name wasn't just in my file. It was in Sarah's. In 2 other juniors' reports. In emails from a former contractor who came forward after the audit started. Greg was a thread in a much bigger knot. And it was starting to unravel. The next week felt like walking through a house after a fire. Everything still standing but nothing the same. The office was dead quiet most days. People whispered in corners. Managers avoided eye contact. HR kept their doors shut. You could almost feel it in the air, like everyone was waiting for something to hit. And then it did. On a Wednesday morning, about an hour after we logged in, Laura walked onto the floor with two people I'd never seen before. Both wore corporate badges. Both carried files. They didn't call Greg in. They didn't ask for a meeting. They went straight to his desk. I'll never forget the look on his face. He smiled at first, that fake easy grin. He started to stand up, hand out like he was greeting old friends. One of the corporate guys held up a folded piece of paper. Greg looked at it, and then his face changed. Not angry, not even shocked, just flat, like everything drained out of him. They walked him out. No words, no scene, just him walking between them, head down. I don't know if anyone said goodbye. I didn't. I just watched his chair roll back empty. But it wasn't over. Over the next 2 weeks, 4 managers got reassigned. 3 people from HR were let go. A senior director quietly retired. And every project Greg had touched got audited. Every deal, every invoice, every client file. It wasn't just a cleanup. It was a purge. One afternoon, the regional director called me into his office. I sat down across from him, feeling that same tight fear in my chest. He didn't waste time. "We owe you an apology," he said. "Not just for what you went through, but for making you think this company didn't care." He told me I'd done the right thing. That if I hadn't kept records, they might never have known how deep it went. That Sarah and others had come forward because I did. Then he said something I didn't expect. "We're promoting you. Effective immediately. Not to lead analyst. To operations liaison. A role that worked directly with compliance and internal review. A real job. Real title. Real power." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. On my way out, I passed by Laura. She gave me a look, not a smile. Just a nod. Respectful. And for the first time since I started at that company, I felt seen. But even that wasn't the end. A few months later, word got around. Greg wasn't just fired. He'd been blacklisted. Corporate sent out notices to every branch, every partner firm. His name was tied to the kickback scandal and the quiet HR cover-up. I heard he tried to get a job with a competitor. They turned him down after 2 days. His reputation was gone. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just felt done. And me? I worked harder than ever. I didn't forget what it felt like, being brushed off, talked down to, made small. I didn't let that make me cruel. But I never stayed silent again. I learned something from all of it. Being quiet isn't the same as being weak. And being loud, like Greg, doesn't mean you're strong. Real strength is knowing when to speak. And knowing how to stand your ground when nobody's standing with you. Greg thought he'd break me. All he did was show me who I really was. And I won't ever forget that.